I'm going to stay down. I was going to go out for this video out on the highway and roll along, but it'll get quite hot if you stay out there, get too far away from the water. So I want to stay fairly close to the coast. This has taken me a little bit to work up to this. It's something that I wanted to do. I've added it to my channel. I see probably, 4 distinct areas that I'll talk about in the channel. It's like today would be ride and talk therapy. It could be road thoughts, ride around town, business showcasing, and highway thoughts, Harley highway thoughts. But what I'm going to talk about today is under the heading of ride and talk therapy. And I suppose there could be subtitles under that, but there's not much sense breaking it down. In this, section of it, what I've been aiming to do, what I'm going to do, is to talk about the names of the guys that are on my vest. Introduce you to who those guys were. And the first guy that I'm going to talk about is Jay McCullum. I met Jay probably in 1975. I joined the forces in 74, but it was 1975 by the time I got to Petawawa to 3 RCR. Jay would have been ahead of me, so he was already there. I don't quite remember exactly when I met him, but in 1976, we were tasked, our unit, for security for the Olympics. We did that. And then that fall, we were moved to Cyprus, the Middle East. The war had just been over, probably in 74. The war had happened there, and probably the shooting stopped in 75. So there was a lot of work to do. So it was a very hot, and I don't say weather hot, but a very hot tour for our regiment, because things were ramped up. So one of the big taskings that we had was to move the Greek Cypriots out of the north and move them to the south. The Turks wanted everybody out of the north, so we were in Nicosia, the capital. The Green Line kind of went right through there. That would have been a staging point. And I have pictures home, and I distinctly remember seeing Jay working. They would be furniture and housing, different things that they had when they fled the north were being loaded on trucks with the security of the Canadian contingent, CanCon. And they had to be moved out to tent cities, and you have to understand this was winter when that was going on in Cyprus, and it's still cold. It's wet. It's very wet, but it's cold. So the Greek Cypriots had to move to the south, wherever we could find spot for them. Or not we, but United Nations. And that was one of Jay's jobs. It's more of a humanitarian thing, I would think. Dealing with people in that kind of distress and their belongings, and to move them to tent cities and try to get them set up. The job that I was doing with the reconnaissance platoon was to help provide security for their herds, their grazing herds. Most everything, I would say, outside the Green Line was eaten down. So there was still good grasses in the Green Line, but there's minefields there, and there's no-go zones. And we would provide security for the Greek farmers and shepherds, that they could take their stock out in the fields and graze them. But the Turks would shoot at them, so we had to kind of provide that armored personnel carrier protection. and keep them out of the minefields. They didn't seem to understand that they shouldn't walk through the minefields. And at the day's end, we would talk about it, and I got to know Jay a little bit more in those periods. And he had been jump qualified by then, and so was I with 3RCR. So our posting after Cyprus, we come back in the spring of '77, would be to the Airborne Regiment in Edmonton. But they started the Special Service Force and centralized everything close to the nation's capital back to Petawawa. So we were being posted right back to our base, and we were all going to the Airborne Regiment. And that's where I really got to know Jay. Because instead of being in many different platoons or companies, now we were in a unique regiment, working close together. I was probably, at that time, was just quite before my 20th birthday, and Jay was probably a year or so older than me. But anyway, we became good friends after that. And on leave, I was in Nova Scotia somewhere, and Jay and another friend had come down to Nova Scotia, and they stopped into my parents' Lobster Pound, and they remember his sense of humor, his laugh, his giggle. And we talked about that too. Jay had a real strange sense of humor, and I don't mean that in a bad way. If I could explain it anyway, he reminded me of Maxwell Smart, on Get Smart, for those that remember the show. He had that giggle. He'd say something kind of out of the corner of his mouth and not look right at you, kind of look away, but he knew he was going to get you to laugh. And that's just the way that he was. I can remember one day, when we were on the obstacle course, and he wasn't having a great day, which that was just standard life in the Airborne Regiment sometime, the way we pushed and trained. But he was up on the top of the scramble net. That was a long way up. He was getting ready to get over, and he wouldn't go over the top. And the sergeant was absolutely losing his mind, screaming at him, "McCullum, get over that, get over it." And Jay kind of looked down at him and just as nonchalantly, "No, not today, Sarge, maybe another day." And I can still remember, I think I was 19, and I was at the bottom of the net waiting to go up. And Jay was coming down, and the sergeant losing his mind, and Jay just said, "Yeah, we'll do it another day, Sarge." I thought I was going to piss myself laughing. And we could draw strength from each other on that, because it was, it was a world of violence and alpha males and hard training. And you never quite knew sometimes where you stood. But there was a bunch of us that were close friends that didn't judge each other, didn't threaten each other, and we drew support from each other. So when Jay came down, when he probably not feeling the best about not completing the task, he wasn't judged. Matter of fact, we joined him and we got a good laugh about it. Talked about it later, but I can tell you this: Jay looked extremely sharp in his uniform. He was very qualified. He knew his infantry tactics. He was confident. He knew what he was doing. Just sometimes you have bad days. Something's in your mind, and you deal with it however you deal with it. I remember when Jay got promoted, and as is the standard, when you get promoted, you put a bit of money behind the bar, let the boys drink on your dime, celebrate, have fun. I had to go back to the barracks for some reason, so I went back, and then I coming back across the parade square, all excited because I knew he was a corporal, and you know, he got promoted. That meant the rest of us were about a year away, so we were, you know, it's extremely, you go from a private to first class private to corporal. So it was extremely kind of exciting time for young men. And he was coming back across the parade square, and I said, Jay, where are you going? What are you doing, man? He said, oh, I'm going to go back to the barracks for a while, back to shack, we called it. Just going to go back and rest for a while. He said, you guys go over, have fun. I'll talk to you after. I said, yeah, okay. No, we'll all see you after. Come on back. So we spent the night in the Carini Club downstairs. That was our junior ranks. And just, you know, being young soldiers, having a good time. And we come back to the barracks afterwards. And that's where Jay's life ended. You don't know what goes through some people's thoughts or some people's minds, what torment, what stressors, what they're feeling, what drives them to do something that you wish they'd never done. But I'm going to say something here, and people may take it the wrong way, and I don't even know if I understand it. But it's a feeling inside. I don't ever think that I would have the courage to do what he did. Now that's a real strange statement. But the conviction that he felt what he had to do and do it. I've been there, but something stopped me. So that was a hard morning for a lot of young men. That was July 8th, 1978. Four days after my birthday. I started really long distance riding, probably 2012, and it was shortly after that I put his name on my vest over there. And he's been with me. It's probably 350,000 kilometers in 9 years, and he's been with me most of the time. Never leaves my memory. Look in the mirror sometime, you know, when I'm cold and I'm wet, lonely on the long rides. And I look and I see their names, and I see his name, and the others I'll introduce as the days go on. And I remember how we trained and what we did together. It gives me pride, gives me peace to keep going. But it's why I wanted to introduce him. I wanted you to hear his name. I wanted you to hear his story. Maybe think a little bit about it. And it's why I strive to keep their memories alive, so they're not forgotten, so we remember them. And this is the way that I can do it. So I'd introduce you to Jay McCollum.